Fantastic. Thanks.
All right. Take care.
Exists to protect us from two things: an overly powerful
Hi everyone, we'll be starting soon, so sorry for the delay.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you all, and welcome back to our weekly routine of Torah study. And it's so special to learn Torah today because it's the day after the holiday of Shavuos. So now that we got to Torah, we have to devote ourselves to more Torah study. That's the whole purpose of getting the Torah. So it's good to see everyone back online for our weekly Torah portion. So today's Torah portion is Nasso, page 748. So first of all, just a little curious fact that you should know, that this week's Torah portion gets first place for being the largest Torah portion of any other Torah portion. There's a total of 176 verses in this week's Torah portion, which makes it the largest Torah portion. If you're a bar mitzvah boy and you're reading the whole Torah this week, then you have the largest Torah reading of the year. Now, somebody said poor label because labels are Torah reading. But first of all, label knows the whole Torah backwards and forwards. He's been reading it for many, many years, so I'm sure he's fine. But there is a little secret to why, on the one hand, it's the longest, but on the one hand, it's not necessarily the hardest. And that is because there is a lot of repetition in this week's Torah portion. Why is there a lot of repetition? Because one of the subjects in this week's Torah portion is the dedication of the Mishkan. We know the Jewish people built a tabernacle in the desert, and what happened was the Mishkan was erected on the first day of Nisan, which is about 3 months ago. Nisan, of course, is the month that the Jews went out of Egypt. The first day of Nisan was the day that the tabernacle was erected, and something very special happened. For 12 consecutive days, each tribe had a representative go into the tabernacle and bring a series of gifts, which included offerings brought on the altar, which means that the inauguration of the temple, the Mishkan, was done through all the 12 tribes. Now, that in itself is a beautiful idea, that a tabernacle or a synagogue in modern days is a home for every Jew. And although the 12 tribes have their different pathways and their different mission statements in life, no two tribes are the same. We know that in Judaism, we believe in unity, but we also believe in diversity. There's unity and uniformity. Uniformity means that everyone does the same thing. In communism, everyone has to be the same. In a democracy, everyone could be different, but they have to have a common goal, a common belief, a common faith, a common objective. That's why the 12 tribes stood around the tabernacle in different positions with different flags, different formations, different encampments, but they all had the same focal point, which was the tabernacle. In our society, we have multiplicity. God made everything with diversity and multiplicity. Look in nature. There's who knows how many millions of different types of species, animals, creatures, plants, fish, right? Dini and I just went recently on a little vacation to Mexico, to Cozumel, because it was Dini's birthday. We spent 3 days there, and one of the things we went was scuba diving, because there's very beautiful reefs and fish down there. And you go under the water and you see all the diversity of the fish. So God didn't make one type of fish or one type of animal or one type of a human being. There's many different types of human beings, not just physically different, that we all have our own unique fingerprint. That's why, your fingerprint is yours only and it never changes. That's why, the FBI uses fingerprints to identify, because it's proof that it's you, because no one else shares your fingerprint and nobody else shares your soul print. Just like your body is just a reflection, a manifestation of your soul. The physical differences that we all have 2 eyes, 2 ears, 1 mouth, hopefully 10 fingers, 2 hands, 2 legs, but no 2 people look alike. Everyone's unique. So God believes in diversity. He made the world with diversity, and God wants everyone to have their uniqueness. There's mass production and custom made. When you get something that's custom made, it's much more valuable. It's much more expensive. Well, God didn't do mass production of human beings. He made every person custom made. But that's our strength, that we have each our unique strengths, and we could complement and work in synergy with one another. So as long as we have a common goal and a common vision in life, our differences is our strength. When we don't have a common goal and vision, then our differences becomes the cause of chaos and friction and conflict and war and all of the terrible things that come out of the clash of human beings, or the clash of civilizations, as we call it. So God wanted many religions, many different cultures, many different civilizations, many different personality types, because that's, you take a husband and a wife. So everyone knows the adage, opposites attract. Is that a good thing? Yes. Why? Because if you and your husband were identical, you wouldn't be able to help each other or complement each other. The beauty of a relationship is that you have strengths, I have strengths, and we could each lend our strengths to each other and elevate each other and assist one another. That's why marriage, and going back to Adam and Eve, God says, I will make a helpmate opposite, not alongside. On the one hand, a marriage partner is alongside you. On the other hand, they're opposite you, meaning that they, like the famous thing that Talmud says, that if you have one sword, it gets dull after a while. But when you have 2 blades, they sharpen one another. So 2 people have the ability to strengthen and sharpen one another. So as long as there's a tabernacle in the middle, there's a mishkan, that everyone's focused on the same goal, the same vision, then our differences come together for a greater purpose than our individuality. And that's true in any society. The problem we're having in our society today is that we have so many different camps, but they're all going in a different direction. They each have a different vision of what the country should be, or function under which beliefs, ideologies. So that's where you have a lot of fighting and conflict, and you have basically a standstill. There's no progress, because it's not 2 people pulling in the same direction. It's 2 people pulling in the opposite direction, just creating tension and wear and tear. So the Torah believes in diversity. So there are 12 tribes. Yeah, we're one nation with 12 different tribes. And that's a good thing that we're 12 different tribes, because each tribe has their pathway. Each tribe, even when the Jewish people crossed the Red Sea, it says they went in 12 different tribes. So today we have Moroccan Jews and Ashkenazic Jews and Sephardic Jews and Ethiopian Jews and Russian Jews and Yemenite Jews and the list goes, Hasidic Jews, Lithuanian Jews, modern Orthodox Jews, all different types of Jews. Is that a problem? No, that's a blessing, because everyone brings their contribution, their unique qualities, their strengths, and the Jewish people become stronger as a result. Why? Because there's a mishkan, a tabernacle in the middle. So now all 12 tribes have to come and participate in the dedication and the inauguration of the mishkan by each tribe bringing their gifts. So here's the very interesting part, getting back to our question, why it's the longest Torah portion, but not necessarily the hardest Torah portion. Why? Because there is 176 verses in this week's Torah portion. But as I told you, maybe 100 of them are repetitious. What does that mean? Because we're going to see that every day another tribe is going to bring their offerings and their gifts to the tabernacle. And on day 1, it's going to be the tribe of Judah. Judah was the leader of the brothers, the kings of Israel. King David, who we just observed his yahrzeit and birthday on Shavuot, he was the first of the. He was a descendant of Judah. Judah rose to become the leader of the brothers, the kings of Israel. So the first tribe was Judah, and then the second tribe, and the representative who brought the offerings was Nachshon ben Aminadab. So basically, each day there's 6 verses that describe what the gifts of that tribe was. And for the next 12 days, each tribe brings their gifts. But here's the interesting thing. The only thing that changes is the name of the day. So day 1, day 2, the name of the representative and the tribe. So on day 1, it's Nachshon ben Aminadab from the tribe of Judah. On day 2, it's Netanel ben Suar from the tribe of Yisachar. On day 3, it's Zebulon from the tribe of Chelon. But the next 5 verses are identical every single day, because guess what? Every tribe brought the exact same gifts. 1 silver bowl, the weight was 130 shekels, 1 silver basin of 70 shekels, and on and on. So basically, once you learn one, you just have to repeat it 12 times in a row with the same words, identical words with the same gifts and the same cantillations. All you have to know is the difference between the first day, the second day, the third day. So about 100 verses in the Parsha repeat itself over and over again. So it is the longest Torah portion, but a lot of it is repetitious. But this jumps right into a very big question, which is, we know that if you study Talmud, you're well aware, or if you ever heard a sermon that discusses a Talmudic passage or a quote, the rabbi spent endless amount of time discussing every passage, every word, and even every letter in the Torah. There are many times that we derive many lessons and laws from one extra word or one extra letter in the Torah, that there's nothing superfluous in the Torah. So the million-dollar question on this week's Torah portion, maybe the most popular question that every commentary talks about on this week's Torah portion, you can meet a Jew anywhere in the world who's studying the Parshah of Nasso, which is this week's Torah portion, and this question comes up. The Torah doesn't waste space. The Torah doesn't write extra words and letters. God could have written this Torah portion a lot shorter. All he had to do was say, on day 1, the tribe of Judah brought these gifts, and on day 2, the second tribe brought it. And instead of repeating everything that the second tribe brought, we could just say that on the second day, the tribe of Yisachar brought exactly the same thing. And on day 3, the tribe of Zebulon brought the same gifts. You could have had, 12 verses that summarize, just say, refer back to day 1. They brought the same thing, or just say, and the next 12 tribes brought the same thing on the 12 consecutive days. Why repeat every tribe's gifts over and over again when it's identical? So if you have an answer to this question, because it's a very open-ended question, by all means, type it into the chat. I would love your feedback, but I'll start giving you some of the answers. And one practical answer is that, when you come to shul on Shabbat or during the week, we all, as Jews, do the same thing. We say the same words, we say the same prayers. When you put on your talit, we wear the same talit, the same tefillin. When the women light candles, they all light the same candles. We all do the same mitzvot. And maybe a Jew will think to himself, well, there's nothing really unique about me because everyone else is doing the same mitzvah as I am. So God is saying, just because everyone else is doing it doesn't minimize the appreciation and the joy and the love that I receive from your particular mitzvah. Here, 12 tribes brought the same gifts. But God finds it worthwhile to repeat each one's gifts, not just say, oh, he did what the other guy did. You're not just doing what someone else did. You're doing what you did. Why? Because no two people do the same thing exactly the same way. You come to shul, you pray the Amidah. Externally, everyone's standing and saying the same words. But if you could go into the heart and the mind of each person praying in the synagogue, there's a vast difference between every person praying. Everyone has different thoughts, different feelings. And even we have different feelings and different thoughts on different days and different times of our life, where the words take on different meanings for us. So God says, I know that on the outside, it may seem like, oh, they all brought the same 12 gifts, but no two people bring the same gift with the same intentions. Everyone has their own unique way of doing what they do, bringing their particular gifts. So we may feel like we're all identical, but we're all different. And that goes back to the human condition. On the one hand, we're all the same. We all have a brain, we all have a heart, we all have hands, we all have legs, but we're vastly different from each other. This may be a good example or not a good example, but I know this is more for women than for men. But if you go to a party or an event or a wedding, there's someone else wearing the exact same dress that you have, right? Ay, ay, ay. We all have to wear different dresses. Men, we all wear the same tuxedos, it doesn't matter. But for women, everyone wants to have their outfit, right? But even if two women show up at a wedding wearing the same dress, there's always a difference. This one does it with this style, matching this, matching that. Like there's always a uniqueness to each person. It's a very mundane, simple example, but surely in spiritual things, which are much more lofty and much more sensitive, every person is unique. And furthermore, God never tires. Oh, you're bringing the same thing the other guy, bring something original. No, it's sort of like if you have 5 children and they each tell you, I love you, mommy. Would you ever say, I heard that from the first one already. You don't have to repeat the same thing over and over again. Like say something new, say something original, right? As many times as your children tell, when your kid tells you, I love you, mommy, they may have already told you I love you 10,000 times in their life. But every time they say it, it's like brand new. It's beautiful. It's sweet. It's delicious. It's uplifting. It's priceless, right? And that's the way God feels about our gifts and our prayers and our work in this world. Every time we do something good, a mitzvah, there's the joy, just like parents. No matter how many good deeds your children did, every time they do something good that you're proud of them, you feel your heart swell with nachas. The greatest joy known to parents, to see your child do something good, that they've learned the lessons you've taught them, they've incorporated it, they're practicing good deeds and mitzvot. You've transmitted good values to your children. When you see your child do a good deed, go out of their way to help somebody, that makes your heart swell. I'll tell the story that there was a story about this girl who graduated valedictorian from medical school, and her family flew in for the graduation. It was a big ceremony. She got valedictorian. She gave a speech. It was so uplifting. And the parents were just felling, after so many years of medical school. And when they left the graduation hall, they were going to a restaurant to celebrate with the family. And they're walking with their newly Dr. Julie, whatever. And they're walking with the parents and the grandparents, and they're walking down the streets of the city to go to the restaurant. And they pass a homeless man on a cardboard box. And the man says, oh, good morning, good afternoon, Julie. How are you? And Julie, in her cap and gown, goes over, starts talking to her, and says, oh, I want you to meet my parents. They came in for my graduation. Oh, congratulations. The homeless man gets up and says, are you the dad of mom of this girl? He said, yeah. He says, I want to tell you something. I sit on this corner in this university town, and hundreds of kids pass me every day on the way to classes and back. Most of them don't even look in my direction. Some of them throw a coin in my bucket. But your daughter, every morning, good morning, calls me by my name, Harold, how are you? Did you have something to eat yet? She brings me a sandwich. When she goes to school, she makes a second sandwich. If she's coming back from the cafeteria, she brings me some banana, an orange, gives me money. You have the most beautiful, sweetest daughter. God bless you. The father walked away and he turned to his daughter and he said, Julie, I have to tell you something. When I was in that graduating hall, my heart was bursting with joy. My little baby girl is now a doctor. Look at her, what she's accomplished. She's valedictorian. I thought that was the proudest moment of my life. I didn't think it could get any better than that. But I have to tell you something. When that homeless man told me how you go out of your way every day to greet him and to bring him food and all of that, I had more nachas, more joy, more pride. I was more pride in my little girl than even watching you graduate valedictorian from medical school. Because what I learned inside the hall of the graduation is that I raised a very bright and accomplished daughter. But what I learned from this homeless man was that I raised a very kind and compassionate daughter. And that's the greatest joy. When you see your children are successful and accomplished, of course, every parent wants to see their children doing well in life. But without a doubt, when you see goodness in your children, when you see kindness, when you see love, when you see generosity, that's the greatest joy. And it's ironic that when parents meet each other, they tend to talk about their kids. and especially their grown kids, and they say, "Oh, what does your son do?" First question is, "So what does your daughter do?" "Oh, she's a banker at Wells, at a JP Morgan. She graduated this." "Oh, my son's a top surgeon," and they right away trade what they've done, what they've accomplished, successful businessman, whatever, and very infrequently, I should say, the parents actually say, "My daughter or my son, he volunteers for this charity, or he's a big supporter of this cause, or he or she is such a kind person, a caring person. They something altruistic that they do about them, volunteer for things or whatever it may be." They talk about their accomplishments and their successes as though that's the be all end all of everything. And even if they do mention some of the good deeds they do, or, "Oh, they're such a kind, loving, compassionate person," because people are not impressed with that. Okay, tell me what they've done, what they've accomplished, how much money they make. I'm not interested in how kind they are, But that should be the first thing we should say, because that's what we really want most of all. Of course, we want our kids to make their way in life and be successful and have a happy, productive life and do good things. But it also has to be all has to be on the foundation of goodness and kindness. So God says every one of your good deeds, every one of your gifts, every act of charity, doesn't matter if 1 million people did the same thing, or even if you've done it 1 million times, everyone is priceless and precious. You never tire of your children's good deeds, and you never tire of their words of affection and love. But the real question that we have to ask ourselves is, why did every tribe give the same exact gifts? If you were invited to a housewarming, somebody has a new home and they invite everyone. In Hebrew, it's called Chanukat Habayit, a dedication of a new house. So one person buys a pot, and one person buys some other gift, a trinket. Everyone brings a gift for the new home, right? Imagine if everyone got together and said, "We're all going to so-and-so's housewarming. Let's all buy the same gift." What do they need 12 of the same gifts? Like, why wouldn't each tribe be a little creative and bring their own individual gift? And again, there are many answers to this question. But one approach perhaps is that, sometimes in life, people try to outdo each other. Competition, jealousy. You did this, I can do that. I hate to say this, but your bar mitzvah had this entertainment. I could do better, get better entertainment, or like one-upmanship. And you want to show everybody, look what you could do, and maybe people should talk about how yours was the most extraordinary celebration, a wedding, bar mitzvah. You had the best this or the best that, best caterer. You flew in, I don't know. Here, they deliberately bought the same gifts, which was humility, showing we're all united. Yeah, we're all unique. We each bring our own gifts with our own intentions. And there's a medrash that explains how every gift from every tribe was born with different motivation and intentionality, because that's really the essence, the intention and the devotion of the heart that you bring the gift with. But externally, they were all the same, because they were showing that we're not trying to outdo each other or compete with each other. Just like there's competitiveness in material things, where people try to show, I could have a nicer car, a nicer house, a fancier this, a fancier that, to elevate myself. Believe it or not, even in spiritual things, there could be that yetzer hara, that temptation to, like, I could be more religious than the next person. I could be more. Now, it's good to be a more pious person, but not to externally try to flaunt it and show that I'm better than the next person, because only God knows the internal service of the heart and the devotion of the person. And only God could judge who's really the more pious, more righteous, more religious, more devoted Jew. So they all bring the same gifts to show we're all united. There should be no jealousy. There should be no competitiveness. There should be no sense of arrogance or pride that I brought something better than the next person. But there's one other answer I just want to share. And again, this is a wonderful class. We have I see 18 people in the class. So imagine we're sitting in a room with 18 people. It's a nice class. So just like in a class, you would give feedback. Feel free to, question anything or comment on anything, and I'll try to discuss it. But here's a very interesting point, and this ties into the beginning of the Torah portion. And we jumped into the 12 gifts because we talked about why it's such a long Torah portion, but I overlooked something major in the beginning of the Torah portion. How does the Torah portion begin? It begins with the role of the tribe of Levy. We all know that in Judaism, there's a hierarchy. There's the Kohanim, the priests, the Levites, who serve the Kohanim, and then the rest of the Jewish people. And the Kohanim had special roles, and the Levites had special roles. And one of the roles of the Levites were that when the Mishkan had to be transported from one location to the other, the Levites carried it on their shoulder, on their back. Now, there were 3 children of the tribe of Levi. There was Gershon, Kahas, and Merari. And each family had a responsibility. The Kahat members had the highest privilege. They carried the vessels of the tabernacle. So when the Jews traveled from one place to another, they carried the candelabra and the altar and the showbread table and all the items, the sacred items, the ark, which contained the tablets. They physically carried those items with poles. Level 2 was Gershon. The brother Gershon, his family carried the curtains and the walls of the tabernacle. And then there was Merari, who carried the beams and the crossbars and the sockets. So each one had a different role. Now, obviously, the Levites were an elevated tribe. They got to serve in the temple and carry the vessels. And within the tribe of Levi, there were 3 different families, 3 sons of Levi. One carried the holy objects, one carried the curtains and the walls, and one carried the sockets and the beams and the crossbars. So in Judaism, we say, on one hand, a Jew is a Jew is a Jew, and all men are created equal, and that's a Jewish concept. We're all made in the image of God. But yet there are certain roles that were given to certain groups of people above and beyond, and it's till today. A Kohen gets the first honor in the synagogue. A Levite gets the second honor. In other words, it's not a complete democracy in the sense that there's total equality. If you were born into a certain family, you have certain privileges. If you're a child of Aaron, you're a priest. So in other words, certain families got certain privileges. Now, I mentioned on the holiday Shavuot, when it comes to Torah, Moses' children do not succeed him because every Jew could be a child of Moses. So when it comes to Torah study, we're all equal. But it comes to certain roles and privileges, there's different families. So perhaps a Jew would feel, it's not fair. I don't get to do a service in the temple. I'm not a Levite. I don't serve in the temple. I'm not a Kohen. I don't bring offerings. I don't get to do that special service to God. So on the opening days, of the 12 opening days, every tribe got a chance to come forth with their sacrifices, with their offerings, saying, we need every tribe present to inaugurate the temple. Yes, there are certain people who have the role to serve in the temple, but every Jew could elevate themselves and be one of the tribes, the 12 tribes that all helped establish the inauguration of the tabernacle, meaning to say that, yes, it's the rights and the privileges of an exclusive group of Levites and Kohens, but that doesn't mean that every Jew is not integral to the service in the temple. And that's why to begin the service in the temple, each tribe had to bring their gifts. Now, this idea goes one step further, okay, which is also in this week's Torah portion, because again, the parsha begins with the Levites' role, and then it goes into these other matters. But there's one other major subject in this week's Torah portion. And that there's a number of other major subjects, but let's start with this one. Have you ever heard of a Nazir? Nazir in English, Nun Zayin Yud Resh in Hebrew. What is a Nazir or a Nazarite? We all know Samson was a Nazarite. What is a Nazarite? A Nazarite is like a priest, a holy person. In that way, they're similar. And that's actually where I'm going to be going with this. A Nazir is someone who takes a vow of abstinence. Now, not sexual abstinence, but abstinence from certain physical pleasures, like drinking wine or even cutting his hair. That's why Samson had long hair, because he couldn't cut his hair from the day he was born. He couldn't drink wine. In other words, grooming yourself is a form of pleasure or enjoyment, or, and drinking wine represents the richness, the flavors, the pleasures of life. A Nazir is a person who says, I am going to distance myself, abstain, remove myself from worldly pleasures. I want to live on a higher spiritual plane devoted to God. I'm not interested in the worldly affairs. Now, you could be a Nazir for life, like Samson was, or you could do it for a period of time. It's like you go on a diet sometimes, or you do something else, You say, I'm going to do this for a certain amount of time, right? You could be a Nazir for a month, for a week, for a year, for 6 months, whatever period of time. For this period of time, I'm going to go through the ritual of Nazirut. I'm going to abstain from certain pleasures. Now, in the Parsha that we're going to read, the Shabbat, it says that when the Nazir completed his period of Nazirut, let's say he said, I'm going to do this for a month or a year, he brought an offering to the temple. And there's a debate amongst the rabbis, what was the nature of this offering? Was it an atonement for resuming his mundane life, that he's now going to leave this high spiritual level of physical abstinence to go back to the mundane physical pleasures? So he has to ask for atonement that he's resuming his physical pleasurable life. Or is it the opposite? That it's an atonement for becoming a Nazir in the first place. And what does that mean? So here we come to a very fundamental subject in Judaism. There are different types of philosophies in life. One philosophy is the hedonistic philosophy. The hedonistic philosophy basically says, eat, drink, be merry, because tomorrow you're going to die. Life is a party. Get the most pleasure out of life, get the most enjoyment, because you got to eat and drink and enjoy life. Eat, drink, be merry, because tomorrow you're going to die. Meaning, just get the most pleasure and enjoyment out of life. That's hedonistic. The goal of life is the most pleasure you can get out of life. And then there are certain religious ideologies that say it's the opposite. You have to reject the physical world. The physical world is a distraction. It's an interference with your relationship with God. So you have to be ascetic, meaning you have to remove yourself from worldly pleasures. And there are many religions where, a priest, I believe, I don't know if all of them, there's something I've heard called an oath of poverty. If anyone knows more about this, you could type it in the box. Where you want to be a man of God, you have to remove yourself from the world. You can't have money. Oath of poverty. That's what I heard. But we do know that in certain, a priest is not allowed to get married, because a woman, that's a pleasurable thing to have a wife. You're not allowed to have pleasure. You have to be abstaining from all worldly pleasures, because the more physical pleasure you have, the less holiness you're going to have. If you want to be a truly holy person, like you said, a priest, you have to remove yourself from the physical world and live a life of, poverty and no pleasure and all of that. Where does Judaism fall in this question? Should we have a hedonistic life? Well, obviously Judaism doesn't believe in just pursuing pleasure. On the other hand, Judaism doesn't believe in asceticism, which is divorcing yourself from material physical pleasure. Just look at Judaism. We just came from a 3-day holiday. All we did was eat cheesecake and ice cream for 3 days, right? The holiest day, we got the Torah, and we're eating and drinking and having wine and pleasure. On the holiest days, we have the most pleasure and enjoyment. Judaism says God wants you to have pleasure. God made these pleasures. Well, who did he make it for? Why do you think he made gold and silver? So a woman could have nice jewelry. Why do you think he made delicious food? So you can enjoy a good meal. Why do you think he made men and women, so we could have intimacy and have pleasure and build families and so on and so forth? So what's the right path in life? So Maimonides famously says there's something called the Shvil Haza'av, the golden path, which means don't go to either extreme. Which means, on the one hand, you shouldn't just spend money constantly on yourself just to pleasure yourself and have, enjoyment. On the other hand, don't be so miserly and spendthrift that you never buy yourself something nice and enjoy something nice. Take the middle path. Don't go to either extreme. And that's true in everything in the world. Judaism always advocates the middle path. Judaism, Maimonides says that's called the chacham. The wise person always takes the middle path. Now, so someone's, I think, is quoting now that the New Testament, I don't know, he's saying that says that okay, so he brought up, Andy, that in the New Testament it says the money is the root of all evil. And it's funny, Andy, that you mentioned this, because there's a story. We're going to the summer now. And the summer is when kids go to camp, right? And I think there's also a quote there about a rich man can't get into heaven, just like an elephant can't get through the hole of a needle. Like, if you're rich and you have money, you're a bad person because you have money, because money is the root of all evil. So it's a funny story. The Lubavitcher Rebbe, I don't remember what year it was, he once drove up to the Catskill Mountains to visit the Chabad summer camp of Gan Yisrael. And when he came into the canteen, he was touring the camp to visit the children there. And the canteen, is where the kids buy their nash. So somebody had put up a sign in the canteen. It was a joke. It said, money is the root of all evil, so leave your evil here. That's what the sign in the canteen said. When the Rebbe came in, the Rebbe said they should take the sign down. Why? Because the Rebbe said exactly this point. The Rebbe said, that's a Christian idea that money is the root of all evil. Money could be the root of all evil, God forbid. Plenty of examples of money being the root of all evil in the world. But money could be the root of all good. There's endless acts of kindness done every day with money. You can't give a poor man an ear. You got to give him money to buy food. You got to help somebody out. You can't help somebody get a medical procedure without money, right? Money is a tool, and therefore it's how you use it that determines if it's good or bad. And just like money could be used for good or bad, food could be used for good or bad. If I just become a glutton and indulge in pleasure all the time, then obviously food is bad. It makes me sick, overeat, I'm unhealthy, and all I do is live for the next pleasure. But if I use food to make a beautiful Shabbat table or a Chag, to sit with my family and sing songs and talk to my children and teach them Torah values, then the food is the most delicious, wonderful thing, because it elevates the whole spirit of Shabbat. Someone said the same thing is with power. You could use your power for good. You could use your influence for good. You could use it for bad. And the same thing is with the pleasure of intimacy. God forbid with the wrong woman. Someone said, what's the difference between the word complete and finished? He said, if you marry the right person, you're complete. You marry the wrong person, you're finished. And if you marry the right person and they catch you with the wrong person, you're completely finished, right? So intimacy with your spouse is the most beautiful pleasure in the world. God gave it for that reason. With the wrong person, it's the worst sin in the world. It destroys everything. So intimacy is not a bad thing. It's a beautiful thing. In the right place, at the right time, with the right person. The same thing with everything in this world. So the middle path is the right way. So why would a person go to an extreme and say, I'm not going to have any wine? Well, God made wine to enjoy. You make kiddush on Friday night. And the answer that I think you could understand, and I see the word balanced here, is very simple. We could all understand it with addiction. If a person's not an addict, they have no problem. They can go have a drink once in a while, say a l'chaim. It's all good. It elevates, Shabbat and holidays. We make kiddush on Friday night. But what happens if somebody abused alcohol and they became an addict and now they just live for the pleasure of alcohol? They have to go to the other extreme and they have to abstain from wine or alcohol. And they can't even let a little drop touch their lips. Is that the ideal state of living? No, God didn't have to make wine if we're not going to drink it. The ideal state is you're balanced. And that's true with everything, by the way. It's not just alcohol. You could be addicted to your phone. You could be addicted to video games. You could be addicted to money. Money's a beautiful thing. Go make a living and live a nice life. You don't have to live like a poor person. But if you're staying in your office till midnight and neglecting your wife and your children because all you want is money, then you need a reset. And how do you do a reset? If I have a piece of paper and it's folded very tightly, and every time I open it, it goes back. I have to fold it the other way, backwards, to go to the other extreme, and then it'll come back in the middle, so to speak, right? So sometimes you have to become a Nazir. One person says, I have to be a Nazir for the rest of my life, because if I ever take the taste of wine, I'm going to become an addict again. Okay, he becomes a Nazir. He voluntarily chooses to be pious and not drink alcohol for the rest of his life. But someone says, I need a 1 year break from alcohol to reset my body, or 1 year. That's permissible under those circumstances. And therefore, according to one opinion, the atonement at the end of the days of Nazirut is to atone for the fact that he came to a place that he had to abstain. Yes, it was necessary, but the fact is, ideally, the person should not be abstaining. Just like a simple example, if you cook a very beautiful meal for your husband or for your children or for your wife, and they come home and you put out a beautiful dinner with 7-course meal, and they say, I don't want to eat anything today. I'm on a diet, or I have to watch myself. I don't want to eat anything. Your parent or your spouse will be very disappointed because they worked very hard to prepare this meal for you. They understand you need to do this because you need to go on a diet, or the doctor told you something, right? But ideally, we should enjoy this meal together. Same thing God says, I made a beautiful world with beautiful pleasures, but learn how to live in the middle, in the balanced perspective. Use everything for holiness. So power is great, money is great, but Shabbat, stop working. Have control over how much money you desire. You should be able to give up 1 day's work for Hashem. Enjoy food, but only eat kosher food, so you have control over. Yes, enjoy intimacy with your spouse, but there's certain times of the month you can't have intimacy with your spouse. Always make sure you are in control of these pleasures, because the minute the pleasures control you and you're always being motivated by pleasure, that's the downfall. One interesting point the rabbis point out, that the laws of Nazir follow the laws of Sotah. It's another big subject in this week's Torah portion. The woman who was a wayward woman who had an adulterous affair, and there's a whole process how it's dealt with to establish whether the woman had fidelity or didn't have fidelity. But the point I want to bring out, is that right after the laws of Sotah, the wayward spouse, comes the laws of Nazir. And a rabbi say, what's the connection? And the rabbi say the connection is when you see how physical pleasure could drive a person to do something so insane, like cheat on their spouse, destroy their marriage, destroy their family, right? You see the power of that of pleasure, that it could corrupt a person to give up everything for a moment's pleasure. And it's something very sad that we see in society all the time, that people who are otherwise great people, but pleasure is so powerful that it could bring the downfall of a person. The truth be told, we just came from the holiday of Shavuot. King David, one of the greatest Jewish leaders, but he also engaged with Bathsheba, which is a very problematic story, which we're not going to get into now. But the point is, pleasure has a tremendous power over people. And it could be, God forbid, lead to very negative circumstances in life, like the Sota woman. You could read the news every day and read about people who did terrible, terrible things, tragically. Why? Driven by desire for pleasure. God forbid. So when a person sees the Sota woman, and look what she did, or at least it's questionable whether she did this, she secluded herself with another man and so on and so forth, then what happens? The man says, you know what, I got to get my desires in check. I got to get my lusts in check. I got to get my instincts in check. And maybe I need to go to the extreme of becoming a Nazir to make sure that I am a master over my impulses, my desires, and never allow it to control me. So that's just a fascinating matter. Another fascinating subject in this week's Torah portion, I'm just giving you the headlines. Obviously, we have to dig deeper over Shabbat. We have the rest of the week to study, but just that you know what the major events of this week's Torah. There's another major event in this week's Torah portion, which is actually practiced till today. Because the dedication of the tabernacle by the 12 tribes, we don't have that today per se. And the Levites' role in the tabernacle, we have the Levite honor, but we don't have that per se. The Nazir, very few Nazirs today. It's commonly not practiced. The Sota, we don't have today. These are biblical time events. But there is something in this week's Torah portion which is absolutely fulfilled till this very day. And guess what? We just did it for the past 2 days. What is that? It is the priestly blessing. Basically, the commandment to Aaron and his children to bless the Jewish people with love is in this week's Torah portion. And on the 2 days of holiday, if you're in the synagogue, the Kohanim went up, they raised their hands, and they blessed the Jewish people. They blessed the Jewish people. And this is a commandment in this week's Torah portion. And the exact precise blessing is in this week's Torah portion. May God bless you and protect you. May God shine his countenance upon you and be gracious to you. May God lift his face towards you and be gracious to you. And in many Jewish homes, the fathers bless their sons and daughters every Friday night with this blessing. And before Yom Kippur in every Jewish home, parents bless their children with this. And this is a blessing that lives on, not just for priests, but the Kohanim are the ones who actually do the mitzvah, the priestly blessing in the synagogue, as we did on the last 2 days of the holiday. But everyone could bless one another with this priestly blessing. I was just at a wedding in New York last week, and they asked the Kohanim to come up and bless the bride and the groom. So it's a blessing that's evoked many times. I'm sure you've heard it multiple times. Sometimes people say it at chuppahs, at weddings, at bar mitzvahs. May God bless you and protect you. May God shine his countenance upon you and be gracious to you. May God lift his face towards you and grant you peace. And again, there's a lot of depth to this threefold blessing. And just to give you one overview that really summarizes our whole last discussion, there's 3 parts to this blessing. A, B, and C. The first one is, may God bless you and protect you. I'm going to give you the simple interpretation from Rashi. When I say simple, there's nothing simple about it, but there's layers of interpretation. But let's just go with the most basic commentary. May God bless you. You're not going to believe what Rashi says. One word. Bimamon, with money. That's right. In Judaism, physical prosperity is a blessing. It's a blessing. But you know what the next word is? The third word in the first blessing, and may he protect you. Says Rashi, you know what it means, protect you? He should protect you from the money that he gives you. What does it mean, protect you from the money that he gives you? Because money is like power. Power could be used in the wrong direction. Money has made a lot of people corrupt, has made people steal from one another, because the more money you have, the more money you want. Talmud says if you have 100, you want 200. If you have 200, you want 400. You keep on growing in your desires, the more you get, rather than be satisfied. Talmud says a person dies with half of his desire for money because he always wants double than what he has. The day he dies, it's half of what he wanted. So protect you from the money. The money shouldn't overtake you and consume your life and distract you from what's really important, and protect you from people who may try to hurt you. When you have money, people with a lot of money need bodyguards, security. They're always being threatened, right? Because money is something that's a blessing, but a blessing that you need protection from that blessing. So the first blessing is material blessings, but protection. You should be guarded that the money shouldn't cause you any harm. What's the second blessing? May God shine his face towards you and be gracious to you. What do you think that's talking about? You need the physical blessings of life. You have a body, you need to eat, you need to drink, you need to have material blessings to live in this world. You have to pay rent, you have to buy a house, you have to educate your children. Everything costs money. You need the physical. But the body is only a vessel for the spiritual. Now may God shine his light towards you. If you look at the end of Shemona Esrei, we say it 3 times a day. God grant us the light of your face. shine your face towards you. Because with the light of your face, you've given us Torah, kindness, a living Torah, love of kindness, righteousness, blessing. In other words, God's face being shined towards you is the spiritual blessings of life. If you just have a physical existence with a lot of money, that's not a meaningful, purposeful, happy life. It just means you have a lot of pleasure, a lot of enjoyment, but you have a lot of problems. Why? Because you don't have a perspective why you need this. What are you using this money for? Just to buy another boat and another plane? Is that what you were put in this world for? Like someone saw a bumper sticker. You know, the goal of life is to get the most toys, and whoever dies with the most toys is the winner. If you have more houses and more boats and more cars, you're the winner. That's what goal of life is, just material? No, it's for a spiritual purpose. To study Torah, to do kindness, to love of kindness, charity, righteousness, mercy, compassion. That's the light of Hashem. And then we come to the last verse. May God lift his face towards you and grant you peace. What does peace mean? Whenever you say peace, and this is one interpretation, whenever you say peace, if there's one person, you can't fight with yourself. Yeah, maybe you could be internally conflicted. But whenever you have duality, then you have room for conflict, and you need peace, harmony between two different entities. Within yourself, you have two urges, every one of us, the physical urge and the spiritual urge. The physical desires, inclinations, and then the spiritual ones. Every one of us, because we have a body and a soul. Our body wants physicality, pleasure, enjoyment, food, whatever. And our soul craves holiness, godliness, spirituality. And we all have this inner wrestling, tug of war. What's the tug of war? One minute we want to do something selfish, pleasurable for ourselves. Another minute we want to do something that's good for others, not just for ourselves. One minute we want to connect to God, one minute we're doing something else. And it doesn't mean we're schizophrenic or hypocritical. It means we have two different parts, a body and a soul. The body wants bodily things, animalistic things, and the soul wants spiritual things. And by the way, that's one of the reasons why Maimonides says take the middle path. Because let's say you say, I want to live a poor life because I don't want money, so I'm going to be poor, right? That may be very good for you, very spiritual. But if you don't earn money, how are you going to give charity and help other people? So maybe you shouldn't be so poor. Maybe you should make money and have a good business and control your desires and not overspend on yourself, and don't waste money on just indulgence, and use some of your profits to give charity to a poor person. If you say, I'm just going to eat bread and water for the rest of my life because I want to be very spiritual, I'm not going to have any physical pleasure. And when you invite somebody to your table, you're going to give them bread and water. Maybe you should have chicken and fish and enjoy a good meal, but at least your guests will enjoy a good meal too. You say, I'm going to have no pleasure, I'm not going to get married. What about your children who want to be born into this world? It's very good for you. You're being a very holy person, but you wouldn't have children if you did that, right? So you can't just think about yourself, you have to think about others. So the third blessing is, may you have peace. Peace means to be able to be, on the one hand, a physical body, on the other hand, a spiritual soul, but yet to have harmony, integration. That you know that you are a physical being with physical interests and desires and motivations, but you have peace, inner peace. Why? Because you understand what those physical blessings are meant to be used for a higher spiritual purpose. And therefore, your body and your soul are not in conflict with each other, but they work in an integrated, wholesome, harmonious way for a common purpose. And we don't have much time to get into this, but God gave us a body because it's like when you want to plow a field, you need an ox. Why? Because the ox has a lot of power, much more power than the human being has to plow the field. But if the human being is guiding the ox, it has much more power. We have a godly soul in our brain. And then we have animalistic drives. But if you channel that animalistic drive with a godly purpose, like the person plowing the field, which produces much more produce and crop, because it harnessed the power of the animal to be used for a higher purpose, to create food for human beings to eat. So too, if we take our animalistic drives, we use it for a higher purpose. I'll give you one example. A rabbi say, and there's so many examples, just a simple example. We just had the 10 Commandments. Okay. 10th commandment was don't be envious of your fellow man. Okay, jealousy is bad, right? So why did God make us with an ego and with a desire to be jealous sometimes of someone else who does better than us? And is all envy forbidden? Well, if you look at the 10 Commandments, it said, right, we read it on Sunday, don't envy the house of your neighbor, the wife of your neighbor, his possessions, his animals, his servants, all material things. But here's what our rabbis say, Kinat sofrim tarbeh chachma. Competition, or not competition, jealousy, kinat sofrim means jealousy among scholars increases knowledge. Oh, this scholar is so learned. He wrote a great commentary on the Torah. I want to write one too because I'm jealous of him. That's good jealousy. That's good ego. Because you know what it does? It propels you to study more and do more. And it doesn't just mean studying Torah. You know, this guy gave this amount of money to charity. I'm jealous of him that he's so generous. He's so charitable. I want to do that too. It could be anything. I see the way this man treats his wife, so much love, so much kindness. I'm jealous. I want to be a good husband like that. I see what a good father, a good mother this person is, how he's so attentive to his child. He spends such quality time. I'm jealous of him that he's such a good father, such a good mother. I want to be a better father and mother. I'm jealous. I'm going to work harder to be a better father and mother. This person is so kind and thoughtful. He's always helping people. I am jealous. I want to be that way too. That's a good jealousy. That's a jealousy that increases more goodness and kindness. So should you not be covet anything? No, covet good things. That's why God gave you that animalistic drive to want to be as good as somebody else. So this is really the ultimate priestly blessing. God bless you and protect you, material blessings. God shine his light upon you, kindness, love, Torah, compassion, mercy, all the virtuous things. And then may you have peace. Peace means that it doesn't have to be one or the other. It shouldn't be, God forbid, that your body obliterates your soul. That's obviously terrible. But it shouldn't be in the reverse, that I'm going to defeat my body and destroy my bodily urges and negate any desires and become like an angel. No. You keep the body and the soul, and they work together for a greater good. That's the peace, the third part of the priestly blessing. That's one of many approaches to understanding the priestly blessing. And by the way, if you open your Siddur, every morning we recite the priestly blessing on our own. It's a blessing to invoking those threefold blessings for ourselves. So when you say the blessing every day in the Siddur, you'll understand it's the physical, it's the spiritual, and in Judaism, it's the integration of the two, because material things can do a tremendous amount of good in this world. And therefore, don't negate it, elevate it. Take the food, take the money, take everything you have in the physical world. When you share your blessings with others, you have a house, you invite a guest in to sleep